What if I told you that men are not called to be the servant in their homes? If that statement bristles against your notions of godly leadership, it's because you've been taught an idea that undermines headship. One of the things you'll hear about in Christian men's groups, etc., is the idea of, quote, servant leadership. This is usually taken to mean that a man leads his family by serving them, which, of course, service in itself is a good thing. It's a godly virtue. It's a good thing to go after, but it's often code speak for a version of headship that relegates responsibility in the home. It's from this idea that horrible caricatures like happy wife, happy life come, which of course is just boomer speak for men allowing decisions, mission, and routines in the home to be dictated by pragmatism, or worse, by women and children. And tragically, the man who, quote, leads by serving is most often assuming the role of a doormat, or perhaps even just the sugar daddy. In this video, I intend to dispel the idea that men are called to lead their households by serving, because there is a better, more godly way. Men aren't called to lead their wives and children by serving. Instead, the heads of households are commanded to a much more sacrificial and godly task, and that is to serve their households by leading. Welcome once again, and hello to the Fierce Men podcast. This is the online movement where men are strengthened, sharpened, and sent to build God's kingdom in their heads, hearts, households, and homelands. So I welcome you to the Fierce Men podcast, to the Fierce Men show. If you haven't yet, you need to join the band group. Go to fiercemen.us and find the green button there. That's where the real conversations are unfolding. If you're a guy who's struggling in your marriage, if you're struggling with sin, that's where those conversations are unfolding. There's lots of guys there to encourage you, to challenge you, to give you scriptures that can apply to your situation. And of course, I'll be talking about some of that stuff in upcoming episodes. But also there, we will be announcing future gatherings in the coming weeks. I plan on doing a bit of traveling over the next year just to mobilize more and more men to get them together in real life. So make sure you join the band. That's where that announcement will happen. And finally, if you haven't yet, please do subscribe to this channel. Go ahead and give this video a like if this channel has blessed you at all, and get involved. Leave a comment. I challenge you to find one brother to share this video with and invite them to join the Fierce Men movement. We don't want our nation to stay the way it is. We don't want our communities to stay the way they are. We don't want to stay the way we are, or our families to stay the way they are. We want to be better men. We want to be sharpened, strengthened, and sent. And that is what Fierce Men is all about. So for today, this is that glorious time of the year when we celebrate, of course, the first coming of Christ. As I'm recording this, we're a week out from Christmas Day. But it's also the time of year when the calendar flips, when you have that little respite between Christmas and New Year, when you can look back at all this last year has contained, for better or for worse. But you can also look ahead at, Lord willing, what He will do in the next year. You can make goals. You can make strategies and plans. And this is a glorious, glorious time of year. So in the coming weeks, I'd like to explore the topic of leadership, specifically in the home. Leadership is a natural and necessary outworking of headship. And here's the plot twist. Leadership in itself is not godly headship. In other words, leading and directing your home in any arbitrary way doesn't constitute godly headship. But biblical headship necessarily encompasses all aspects of leadership. Now, it's possible to be the head of your household, but an incompetent leader, in which case you would be a lacking head. So it's possible to be a head, but a bad leader. However, it's impossible to be a godly head and also an incompetent leader at the same time. And that's what this video is all about. So this week, I'll be discussing vision and creating family leadership plans in general. And Lord willing, next week, I will share with you, actually in about 2 weeks after Christmas, because next week I'm taking it off for Christmas. That following week, I will share the exact format that I've used for about the past decade to lead our family. So I hope this is helpful to you. If you want to be a better leader in your household, this episode is for you. So let's talk about leadership, specifically in regard to service. As I opened this episode, I kind of pushed back against this overarching evangelical narrative of servant leadership. And really, men are called to serve their households, yes, but they serve their households through leading. And oftentimes when you think of service as a Christian call, you may think of John 13, where Christ calls his disciples by washing their feet. He says, so you should do this to each other. You should seek to be great in the kingdom and do so by serving and sacrificing for one another. Now, what made Christ's example so profound and so powerful was his station. All right, this is God in the flesh, the Son, the second person of the triune God who had condescended into creation in order to save mankind. There is nothing remarkable about a servant who serves. And what is remarkable about Christ is that he is Christ, and he served as Christ. He washed the disciples' feet, but this wasn't the relegation of his role as the head of his church. In fact, it was part of his larger plan. It was part of his larger mission to save his people, or the saints for whom he came to ingather and to beautify as his church. So Christ, of course, he is the exemplar for leadership and service in the home. And Paul said as much in Ephesians 5, which of course is a well-worn, well-known passage, and for good reason. In fact, I want to read it to you for posterity. It says, and this is Ephesians 5:22 through 33. It says, wives, submit to your own husbands as to the Lord. Quick sidebar, what does submit mean? Submit means coming underneath a mission. All right, so wives are called to come underneath a mission. Now, what this assumes is that the husband actually has a mission for his wife to come underneath of. And so this episode is about what that mission is. So the verse goes on. It says, wives, submit to your husbands as to the Lord, for the husband is the head of the wife, even as Christ is the head of the church, his body, and is himself its Savior. Now, as the church submits to Christ, so also wives should submit in everything to their husbands. Husbands, love your wives as Christ loved the church and gave himself up for her, that he might sanctify her, having cleansed her by the washing of water with the word, so that he might present the church to himself in splendor, without spot or wrinkle or any such thing, that she might be holy and without blemish. In the same way, husbands should love their wives as their own bodies. He who loves his wife loves himself, for no one ever hated his own flesh, but nourishes and cherishes it, just as Christ does the church, because we are members of his body. Quote, therefore a man shall leave his father and mother and hold fast to his wife, and the two shall become one flesh. This mystery is profound, and I'm saying that refers to Christ in the church. However, let each one of you love his wife as himself, and let the wife see that she respects her husband. For quick context, Ephesians is a book that's all about breaking down this wall of hostility between the Jews and the Gentiles, that Christ, this mystery that Christ has revealed is the fact that this covenant has now been extended to the Gentiles, and there is now this one flesh, this one body that is Christ's church, and that wall has been broken down. And now he's using marriage as a point to illustrate that. So I would argue that this Ephesians passage, though it does speak directly to marriage, is not primarily about marriage. It's actually about the union of Christ with his believers through the one body that is the church. But for all intents and purposes, we're talking about marriage today. We're talking about headship today. So Christ, now remember his station, second person of the Trinity, the Son of God. He loved the church and gave himself up for her in order to sanctify her. And Paul goes on and says, having cleansed her by the washing of water with the word. So here we can't help but think of Jesus washing the disciples' feet in John 13, which he did, again, to illustrate his posture in being crucified to wash their very souls. Again, that was his mission. He went about doing the service as a point of illustrating his mission. And then Paul says to husbands, love your wives in this same way. So when it comes to your station in the home, you are not the servant. You are the head. Now, this is the architectonic point. This is the starting point. You are the head. And then, and this is very important, from your headship, you take up the towel and bowl and you wash your family's feet as a means to a greater end. Right? We're washing their feet. We are serving them, but it is as a means to a greater end. The service is not an end in itself. You take on the role of a servant as the head, the Christ representative in the home. You take on the role of the servant, but all the while never forgetting your mission or your station, your position, your God-ordained role as the head of your household. You, as a result, must lead. You must have this mission in mind if the service is to have any sort of gravitas or any weight to it. You see, as we look at Christ's example when he washed the disciples' feet, he didn't just wash their feet and then stand by and wait for their next instruction or their next desire, right? He washed their feet to show them the nature of his role as the suffering servant and the profound reality he brought as the king who, in fact, came to serve. He showed them the action and then he taught them the import of the action that he showed them. It was never about the action, but it was always about the end game. It was about what Christ came to accomplish and the means by which he accomplished that, and that is by humbling himself to death, and even death on the cross. Man, the power of Christ's service is that he is in fact the king, and he is doing the service unto his kingly ends. He had a plan that he was executing as leader of his church, and for a time, that leadership looked like serving, but it was never outside the context of his glorious redemptive work. So men, in the same way, we are called to lead as an act of love, to lead as an act of service. You are called to take the helm, to direct your household as one who is utterly submitted to Christ, right? So your wife comes under your mission, submitting to you because you are utterly submitted to Christ. You are under Christ's mission. So we are called to lead in the home. And in fact, our leadership in the home is one of the greatest acts and one of the greatest calls we have as heads of our household. But in order to lead, you need a plan or you need a vision. So here's my question for you, fierce men. Do you have a vision for your household? Do you have a vision for your home, the space in which you live with your wife and kids? Do you have a vision for how you will love your wife, how you will lead your wife, for how you will love your children, and how you will lead them into the nurture and admonition of the Lord? So that's my question to you. Do you have a vision for these things? Now, if you don't despair, all right? The whole reason Fierce Men exists is to help men become greater men, to learn to embrace the reality of your station as a man of God, somebody who's called to lead your household, someone who has been entrusted with a household, one of the greatest treasures we can possibly have. So if you don't have a vision, don't despair, no shame. That's why we're here. If you do have a vision, maybe this will help you think through different categories in different ways. So to that end, I'd like to propose just a few facets of your family life that need your leadership. Now, I say facets because really these aren't different areas. They're just different sides of the same gem that is the core objective. And the core objective, of course, is to lead your family in a way that honors Christ and in a way that they will flourish under your care. So I will propose for today these three spiritual facets. Number one, the spiritual facet. Number two, the provisional facet. And number three, the relational facet. Now, you might want to add other categories or facets. I'll leave that up to you. But for today, I'm just going to give you these three broad categories to think through. And hopefully, as I explain them, you'll see how they kind of fill out maybe other areas that you might have seen necessary in your marriage and in your household. So as you consider these facets, I want to encourage you to think of them in 5 ways. So I'm going to talk through each one, but let's think about them in 5 ways. And all of them are in light of your headship and in light of the responsibility and the accountability you have before God as the head of your household. So you're going to think about them in terms of your agency, reading the situation, articulating your intent, identifying a course of action, and clarifying your vision. Now, what do I mean by these things? When I say your agency, when you think about these various facets in terms of your agency, this is simply just taking ownership of the area out loud, right? I would consider this maybe a declaration of dominion of sorts. That's articulating your agency. The second thing I talked about as you're considering these facets is reading the situation. What is the current state of affairs for the spiritual life, the relational life of your household, and the provisional component of your household? The third area or the third way to think about these is articulating your intent. What is this? This is just drawing lines between what you clearly aim to do in contrast with what you do not aim to do. Right, so what is your intent in that area, in that facet of your family? The fourth way to think through this is identifying a course of action. What are the tangible faith-filled steps that you plan to take in the coming days, weeks, months, and years in order to see your vision come to bear in that area? And finally, clarifying your vision. That is what I mean by that is you're taking time to envision what the fruit of your leadership will bear. So if this sounds like a lot, I'd like to just walk through each one of these areas with you. And I encourage you to take notes or maybe make mental notes as you're driving or doing whatever you're doing. I want to apply each one of these kind of ways of thinking about things to each of the 3 facets that I proposed. And again, in the next video, in about 2 weeks, I will go through our family vision and share that with you. So maybe you'll see another example of it. But my whole point here is to get you to embrace and enjoy the role of leadership that you have in your household, but then to begin thinking through what it means to create a plan so that they might flourish under your care. So spiritually, let's talk about that. How will you lead your household in their reverence and relationship to God? What is the spiritual life of your home? All right, so going through the first of the 5 ways to think through this, agency. agency, I want you to say this. Say, I am the God-appointed priest in my household. Say it. I am the God-appointed priest in my household. Why do we say it? Because we need to own it. We need to hear it said out loud sometimes for it to sink in. So that's agency. Now, what's the situation? Answer this question. The spiritual condition in my household is blank. Good, could be better, lacking, non-existent. Awesome. What is the spiritual condition of your household? Take a moment, 5 minutes, take stock. How are things going? Are you leading them in their reverence and relationship to God? Are your children, do you have a plan for seeing your children understand, know, love, and obey who God is and what he's commanded? Read the situation. The third way to think through this facet is your intent, or what is your objective? This is just a simple intent statement. So what do you intend to do? So you've recognized your agency, you've read the situation. Now, what do you intend to do? So when it comes to the spiritual facet of your household, you might write it like this. I intend to blank. I intend to lead my family into a deeper relationship with God. I intend to disciple my children. I intend to elevate the things of God over the things of the world in my household. Whatever that is, you need to clearly articulate what it is you intend to do. The fourth way to think through this is your course of action. What are the tangible steps you're going to take? So you might have a statement like this. I will accomplish my intent by what? By leading family worship, by maybe you need to grow in your own spiritual life. I will accomplish my intent by getting in the word daily, by praying daily. The thing is, we need to think through these categories so that they actually beget actual action. And then the fifth way to think through this is your vision. So this is my favorite part. This is where you would say something like, in a year, I envision a household that blank. Or in 5 years, I envision a household that blank. Or children that blank. I envision a wife who blank. What is it you're hoping to see? What is the fruit that you're hoping to see based on this course of action that you're planning to take? Now, this whole exercise, you can get very detailed with it. As I began to do this for myself, I found myself getting bogged down. I would say start as general as possible. Don't feel like you have to have everything outlined or everything specifically articulated, but really just begin thinking in these broad categories. And as you'll find, as you think through it more and more, you will see throughout the day how you can actually tangibly put this stuff to work. I want to talk about the provisional piece now. So we've talked about the spiritual aspect of your household. Let's talk about the provisional facet of your household. This has to do with your role as provider. Now, the word provisional is a bit of a wrong word because it's kind of a legal term. I'm saying it provisional in terms of provision, right? So thinking in terms of your family's needs, right? Their food, their shelter, their health, relationships. What are all the things they need? The education of your children, the discipline of your children, the opportunities afforded to them because of the decisions and the plan that you have in place. What is your vision for the provisional facet of your household? All right, so go to agency again. Say it out loud. I am the God-appointed provider for my household. I am the God-appointed provider for my household. Now, read the situation, going on down the list. The current financial condition of my household is blank. It's healthy, could be stronger, or it's lacking, or our needs are met, but our savings is lacking. The third thing to think through is your intent or your objective. You might say something like, I intend to blank. I intend to have a household that has its needs met. I intend to let my wife stay at home so she can educate the kids. I intend to purchase a rental property as a part of my legacy planning in the next 1 to 5 years. What do you intend to do? Now, the course of action. To accomplish my intent, I will blank. I will begin saving. I've not talked about it here, but we use an app called Capital. It's Qapital. And it's just one of these apps that kind of squirrels away just a few dollars, or you can set up different rules and things. That's one of the courses of action that I've taken in our household is I think every month, $68 comes out of my checking account. And that's just for any future car expense. I've got one for future home expenses. I've got one for future investments. And this, it puts rules in place. It puts that course of action in place so that it's automatic. I don't have to think about it. But what is your course of action to achieve your provisional goals for your household? And then vision. In some period of time, now you have to insert the period of time there. In the next year, in the next 5 years, I envision a household that is financially aware. Maybe you envision starting a business. Maybe you envision, I mentioned a rental property. What is it that you're planning for the provision of your household? Or maybe you envision getting a better high-paying job. Maybe you envision changing careers. Whatever it is, What is your vision? If you have fruit from this plan of action, what is it you're praying and hoping for the Lord to provide? And finally, what is your vision for the relational facet of your household? Now, what do I mean by relational? When I say relational, I mean things like how they relate to one another, how your children are getting along, how they're respecting and honoring their mother, how they are learning to obey. This could also mean things like quality time together, family time. How are you going to prioritize being together, having fun, making memories? This could even go into things like planning vacations, both near and far. When I say near and far, I mean they could just be local or further, but I more so mean vacations in the near term, but also in the far term. I mentioned squirreling away money. That's one of the things we're squirreling away as part of the vision we have for our household is we want to be able to do a larger, longer trip. And so we're actually saving for 4 or 5 years out with that in mind. How is the Lord leading you to lead the relational facet of your household? And I would say this most importantly has to do with peacemaking in the household. So in terms of agency, going through the 5 areas of thought here, agency, say this: I am the God-appointed peacemaker in my household. I, as the head, am the God-appointed peacemaker in my household. So you're going to read the situation. The current relational condition of my household is what? Maybe the children are needing extra discipline. You would identify that here. You would identify any positives, any negatives that you see in your own household. Try to see it as clearly as you can. Then you would articulate your intent or your objective. So I intend to blank. Maybe you could say foster joy. I intend to foster meaningful relationships. I intend to figure out what it means to discipline, to do a study on discipline that I might more thoroughly understand how to disciple my children and teach them and instruct them and to show them the standard and then help them rise up to meet the standard of discipline in our household. To that end, to accomplish your intent or your objective, you're going to look at a tangible course of action. That's the 4th way to think through this. You might think, I will accomplish my intent by what? It could start with reading a book. It could start with buying a couple new games to grow the relational aspect of your household. Whatever your course of action is, be as specific as you can. And then finally, what is your vision? So you'd say in 1 year, 5 years, 3 years, in some period of time, I envision a household that what? I envision a household that laughs together. I envision a household that enjoys one another. I envision teenage children. They might be toddlers now, but you could say, I envision teenage children who are best friends, who love, honor, and respect one another as they love, honor, and respect the Lord, as they love, honor, and respect us as parents. What is your vision? How do you want the relationships in your household to look? You are the leader in your household. This is up to you to identify what it is and then create a course of action to get there. So as I said earlier, this can get pretty complex. You may find that through this process, you have too many options, right? Too many ways you could go about making your plan come to bear. And in fact, the biggest question is actually already answered for you if you're a Christian man. Right? Your mission is to lead your family in order that they may glorify God and enjoy Him forever. That's the biggest, highest mission that you have as a husband and as a father, as a man. That is the big what. And it inevitably will drive every aspect of your leadership, but the specifics of how or where or when, how you should lead them to that grand what, those are all matters of wisdom and focus. And in my next video, I will give you a tangible example of how I've parsed through some of those more tactical considerations. So I hope this video has got you thinking. And my prayer is that you would embrace the idea that you are to serve your household, not just by serving them, but you are to serve your household in the greatest way possible. And that's by leading them, loving them as you are submitted to and led by Christ. Fierce man, you are God's appointed leader in your home. The greatest call you have to serve your household like Christ is through your leadership. You serve your household by leading and not the other way around. So my encouragement for you is to own it, to exercise it. I encourage you to establish a leadership vision for your household, and may your family flourish as you clarify your vision and as you hone your focus as the head. So as a reminder, if you haven't yet, please do subscribe to Fierce Men on YouTube. Make sure you find the podcast, if that's your thing, wherever you get your podcasts, or on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, things like that. If you haven't yet, also join the Fierce Men band. Go to fiercemen.us, find the green button there. That's where all the real conversations are happening. I encourage you to join. And finally, as a challenge, share this with one brother who you think needs it. Somebody who is maybe down and out, who needs encouragement by other men, who needs to be reminded of the magnificent call into manhood, into headship, and to serving Christ in these various ways. So that's it for now. Enjoy this glorious season. I pray that the Lord blesses you and blesses your plans. Stay fierce, men. gird them up, and keep them lit. I'll see you next time.
See, apart from me, all you workers of evil, for the Lord has heard the sound of my weeping. The Lord has heard my plea. The Lord accepts my...
So as a reminder, my word. So